Now, I don't need to tell you that these are strange times we find ourselves in,
Absolutely.
but we're a
Yes.
little bit behind China. So, my name's Andy Rice. I'm a sailing journalist from the UK. And on the line with me from Shenzhen in China is Choni Lin. Now, Choni, you're wearing a mask, but please take the mask off. Um,
Thank you.
um, Yeah. Firstly, let's just put a bit of context on this. So we met working together at a sailing event called the China Cup in November 2019, and so the world was very different then. Since then, COVID-19, coronavirus, whatever we choose to call it, sprung out of Wuhan, further north from you in another part of China. And I really wanted to catch up with you just to find out how life had been for you in this new world of coronavirus. And it's particularly interesting for us in the UK and more broadly in Europe and even in the USA to understand what it's like to go through the early stages of being hit by coronavirus. So very long introduction, but Choni, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Really happy to be having this conversation with you.
Now, we are living in a world of fake news. Yes, you look Chinese, you don't sound very Chinese. How can we prove to people watching this and listening to this that you are actually in the city of Shenzhen in China?
Yeah. So yes, I am currently indoors, so I guess like with the background you can't really tell where exactly I am, but I guess like the most direct thing to be able to tell is that I do have all of these snacks with me on deck. Um, they're made in China as well. I got them just right after the coronavirus outbreak, and they've managed to last me this long, which is kind of surprising, but yeah.
Do you know how much they're worth? They masks in
Oh,
Italy a couple of
yeah,
weeks
I'm
ago were
probably
changing
like,
hands.
yeah, I'm rich now, probably. I'm a billionaire now.
Yeah, I think so. Also, speak a little bit of Chinese to us as well, just so we know that you actually speak Chinese. So tell us who you are and where you're from and what it's like living with coronavirus with in a bit of Mandarin.
Alright, sounds good. 那我叫林璐，那么我现在呢是在中国的深圳，然后算是就是离最早爆发的武汉的地区是比它更南方一点的，就是相当于就是深圳最沿海的中国最沿海的地方。Yep.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good proof. Um,
Fluent Chinese.
But where do you get your amazing accent from? Because you do speak perfect English as well. So just give us a little
Right.
bit of context. You're 23 years old.
So yeah, I'm 23, and prior to moving back to China, I actually spent the past 7 or 8 years in the U.S. So since I was in high school, I was sort of studying and working in the United States, and I moved back. So sort of picked up my English just from living there for such a long time.
Okay, and so when you moved back to China, what were your options? You ended up working for China Cup. Where sort of why did you end up working in the China Cup? And more interestingly, for me, the sailing world.
So I was the reason for me moving back was because my work visa didn't go through, and so I was sort of in a rush. I didn't have a whole lot of time to really plan out my career path. After this sort of surprising of an event, and I was also in a stage where I had to keep a very steady income in order to keep everything going. So once I found out I had to move back, I immediately, was just like looking for jobs, anywhere that I could. But at the time, I really wasn't, completely familiar with the work environment in China. So I figured I would just go and start with a Chinese corporation to just get myself familiar and sort of get back into the things of like living in China.
Okay, so that's where you are now. So there's a bit of context for who you are. Now, what's life been like over the past 4 weeks, 6 weeks? How long have you been confined, pretty much to living at home?
So it started right around Chinese New Year, which was January the 18th. So that's, when the self quarantine policy really came out. And up until now, it's been 2 months. So I want to say the past week or so has been a lot better. People have been going outside more, but just from the start of the outbreak till now, almost 2 months that we've sort of just not had our normal lives.
And how hard did coronavirus hit the city of Shenzhen, which, by the way, is for people watching, is very near Hong Kong, just over the border from Hong Kong.
Right, yeah. So for Shenzhen, actually has a little bit of a distance from Wuhan, which is like originally where the outbreak happened. But the problem with Shenzhen is, well, it's not a problem, but the thing with Shenzhen is it's largely immigrated. So people from all over the country moves here for work, for their families, or they're coming in and out. It's almost like the United States. People are constantly coming in and out. So we've had a lot of cases where people either are traveling to Shenzhen or, coming into Shenzhen were infected, and then that number grew actually tremendously. So we were at one point, actually, for the most part, we were the city with the most cases confirmed outside of the state of Hubei.
Wow, because of the
Yeah,
reasons of it being a very mobile population.
correct. Yeah.
Um, and Shenzhen is an interesting place. It's sort of like the tech center of
Right.
of China. So it's where a lot of the innovation comes out of. In our world of sailing, the DJI drones that seem to be the dominant player
Yes.
in the drone market come out of
Yep.
Shenzhen, don't they?
Hmm.
So anyway, how fearful have you been of getting the virus yourself?
Um, it was always a big question mark for me because it's not anything that you can see or smell or touch. So like when I go outside, I never really just know for sure. Especially now that we've seen like outbreaks in other countries as well, and different countries are taking different approaches. In the States, like a lot of my friends in the States are still going out. We just had St. Patrick's Day and they were having the most fun. They were having the time of their lives, and like they seemed fine. So I just get very confused. But then again, seeing the cases confirmed growing, like seeing the numbers grow every day, and I have friends and families who are infected too. So I never quite know what exactly. I'm still confused, honestly.
So you have friends and family that have caught coronavirus.
Uh, Friends and friends' families, yeah. So
I
my
see.
family, my immediate family are good. We're doing well, but yeah, I definitely have friends and their family members who have been infected.
And have all of them come through it okay?
I'm actually not entirely sure. So it's sort of like a sensitive time too. So I try to, definitely keep in touch with them, but also give them the space that they need.
Okay. And what's your sense of where the epidemic has reached in terms of China?
You mean like just in China?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are coming down, right? So the rest
Correct.
of the
Yeah.
world is watching those numbers quite carefully, and we're sort of keeping our fingers crossed that what is happening to China might show
Hmm.
light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. So I want to say that the scare and the anxiety of catching the virus, I think, has calmed down a lot, and I think we definitely see that in the decrease of the number as well. And I want to say that it's sort of, we definitely still need to be cautious, but I think it's largely under control. At least a lot better than a month ago, or even 2 weeks ago. We've seen a lot of companies that, like, people are going back to work now, and we're seeing a lot more people going out um, for like entertainment and for, just going to the park and going for a walk, going to the mall, going to the movies and stuff. And gyms are open now too. So we've definitely seen, changes where people are going back to their normal lives.
What's been the hardest thing for you over the last couple of months?
Um, for me, I'm just a very outgoing person. I just have to go outside and I just have to talk to people. And I had just moved out of my mom's as well. So I'm renting on my own. And since we're all self quarantining, I really didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't have friends over, nor could we go outside, to grab a coffee or to grab a drink, or to go to the gym. So things like that was just like, not being in your normal routine. I didn't think it would be this difficult.
So for you, the social aspects have been some of the most difficult elements of this.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what about? I'll give you an example. In the UK,
Hmm.
supplies of toilet roll have cleared out. I mean, no
Right.
one knows. It's the big unanswered question in the UK. Who
Yeah.
is taking all the toilet roll, and why are they taking it? Because
Yeah.
the coronavirus, as far as I know, doesn't affect the other end of our bodies. So
Right.
um, so what is the mystery disappearance, or what kind of parallel can you draw in terms of stockpiling and what things are hard to come by now in China?
We've been doing pretty well now in terms of, supplies, especially with food and beverages. But when it was around the time of Chinese New Year, which was when it was first, breaking out really badly, I think a really interesting thing that I saw was people would just like how people in the Western cultures are fighting for toilet paper now. We were fighting for rice, which like oh my gosh, this this just like sort of speaks to the stereotype, and I was just like very weirded out by that. Like people were just taking bags and bags of rice. It almost just felt like people were going into hibernation. They were just preparing for it. So I
I
think
can
that
relate to that more than toilet roll. I mean, there is some sense to stockpiling rice.
it's but like it was just bags on top of bags.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But did
then it
supplies
was
ever run short? I mean, was there ever a shortage of rice?
um for the first, I want to say for the first 1 to 2 weeks, because people were panicking. I'm not gonna lie, we were panicking. So because we didn't know, how badly it was going to get or how fast it was going to get, however badly. So we were sort of panicking. So we were just, taking everything that we can. And so my family, we've always been pretty laid back. We've always been pretty chill. But I remember one time my mom came back and was like, you know what, even I was panicking because seeing people panic, it's hard for you to not be affected by that. So my mom started grabbing bags of rice too. So,
Well, if I
yeah,
see some toilet roll, I'm going to grab it, because eventually, if everyone else is grabbing the toilet roll and you see some toilet roll, you think you better get it before you can't get any
exactly.
toilet roll. So
Right. Yeah.
I can sort
Yeah.
of
You
relate to
have,
the way. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you have to take care of your business. So, right.
You do, yeah. But anyway, I still see what we put in at one end of our bodies. Rice is more important than what comes out the other
And
end
toilet
in
paper.
these
Yeah.
in these difficult
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think a pretty big reason why we have been doing pretty well is because we had the experience from SARS in 2003. I was only like 7 or 8 years old, but I think just having experienced something very similar, just knowing what people would be panicking about, um, it sort of gave us some insights on, like what our government or organizations need to be doing, or people individually as well. So we were really quick on, calming people down and saying that we don't actually need to, fight for food or toilet paper or rice or anything. We've actually been keeping a pretty steady supplies through the whole thing.
okay. Now, I don't know how aware you are of the different approaches that some European governments are taking, but by and
Mm-hmm.
large, it looks like Italy and now Spain is following the sort of the lockdown process that China applied, that basically everyone has to self-quarantine. Whereas in the UK, it's been much more open, and the British government seems to be talking in terms of getting a herd immunity to the first round of coronavirus, because it's probably going to mutate and re-emerge in some form, and as COVID-19 2.0 or whatever, or COVID-21, whatever year it comes out in.
Right.
And the idea, I think, is that we're going to be better immunized to cope with whatever comes our way for round two. Whereas if you completely shut yourself away and you haven't built that herd immunity, maybe you're
Right.
not as well equipped to deal with a mutated strain. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you're not an expert, I'm not an expert, but you are an expert in the sense that you're going through this at the moment and you're further through
Mm-hmm.
this process. Um, which of those two approaches do you have more faith in, more trust in?
Um, Again, I've put myself in both shoe, and I honestly, I'm gonna have to say I'm really not sure.
That's fair
So,
enough. I'm putting
right.
you on the
So,
spot. Yeah.
right, really. So I'm not denying that the Chinese way has worked, because we are seeing the decrease in the numbers of people infected. We definitely are seeing that, and we've been healthy too. Um, but then again, and I know a lot of my friends in the US as well, they're still, sort of living their lives like normal, and they're also doing fine, at least for now, and a big thing that hit me was, the other day I was talking to a couple of my friends in the States, and they were just saying, "Oh, our government is telling us that masks don't really work because they can only stop bacteria, but since virus cells, like their cells, or I'm really not an expert in biology, but since viruses are much smaller, the masks can't actually stop you from getting them."
Well,
That's what
this
they're
is
like.
why
My
this is why I find it particularly interesting talking to you, because you've lived in the
Mhm.
States and
Yeah,
you have lived and breathed the air in the US. You've lived and breathed the air in China. We hear in the
right.
West how bad the air quality is in China.
Mhm.
And we see a lot of masks. I mean, I've come to China every year for the past 8 years or so for the China Cup
Mhm.
event. And also I spent
Yeah.
a lot of time in Hong Kong, and you see people on public transport wearing masks all the time, any day of the week. It's the exception in the UK. You hardly ever see anyone wearing masks. So
Right.
tell us about the cultural difference there and why you think people have always worn masks anyway in Asia.
Um, I think that's honestly a pop culture trend, because it started off. My understanding was, it started off with, like, K-pop stars, or like celebrities wearing masks to, sort of as a disguise, so they wouldn't be recognized in public
Oh,
spaces.
right. Okay.
Yeah, and then it became sort of like a fashion trend of, they would get the better looking ones. So like these are just like the very normal masks, but they would get like white ones or like black ones to match with their outfits, and then put a hat on to, sort of like it completes the look.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's
But
my
if I see
understanding.
a 60-year-old woman wearing that, she's not wearing that to look like a K-pop star, is she?
Um, Probably not. But from what I've seen, I've always seen more before the whole virus thing. I've always seen more like younger people
Okay.
with like completed, outfits and looks wearing masks. So that
Right.
was, yeah, that's how I came to my conclusion. But I would say if, an older a person of an older age group wearing the mask, then they're probably doing it for the pollution, or I mean, depending on where they're at in China as well.
Just coming back to that difference of approach between the UK government and other
Hmm.
governments that are taking a sort of a more hardline quarantine everybody approach. Um, you've already mentioned the sort of the mental health aspects that you've struggled with in terms of you're a social animal. You want to get out and meet people.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
how do you draw the comparison between what the damage has been done in medical terms and in terms of obviously the deaths that coronavirus has caused, compared with the impact that it's having on people socially and in terms of business and people potentially losing their livelihoods?
Right. So I'm also just building off of my experience because I've not actually had the virus, so I'm not physically sick, nor have I been physically sick to be able to understand that side of the struggle. But I just know that from being, especially when you're healthy and well, but you have to be stuck at home, that sort of, at least for me, it really messes with my head. You know, I start to think, how long is this going to end? How long is this going to last? And when is this going to end? You know,
So so
I
how
would just feel like,
what
what if I
strategy?
have to continue to live like this for the rest of my life?
Well, that's a pretty daunting prospect, isn't it? Let's hope it
Right.
doesn't
Yeah,
come
because
to that.
when you're sitting at home in a very, you know, like a confined area for a long time, you sort of start losing perception of time. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah,
Like I
no,
literally woke
absolutely.
up one day. I woke up one day and I was like, I don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know what the date is. Um, I don't know how long I was asleep for, and you sort of just like lose the structure of your like daily life. I don't know if that makes sense at all. And it seems like when I'm speaking it out loud, it doesn't even sound like that big of a problem. I sound like I'm whining. I feel like.
I feel like I might be able to relate to what you're talking about far too well in a month or two's time,
Right, in
but
a couple of weeks, yeah.
you only give me a couple of weeks. So
Right.
what you say reminds me of those Hollywood movies where someone's whiling away their time, you know, say in a movie like The Shawshank Redemption, they're banged up in prison for years on
Mhm.
end, and they're notching every day of their existence in this prison cell with another notch on their bedpost. They've got to count the notches on the bedpost to remind themselves how long they've been in there.
Right. Yeah, I think a couple of my friends, especially if their families are a little bit more nervous, you know, they're really strict about not going outside. I remember my friend told me, it was like, you wake up, because I wake up, I usually wake up around like 9 to 8:30, 9 in the morning. I remember my friend was like, you wake up too early. Your day's gonna be really, really long. You know, we were going through that. We were just like, okay, just sleep for a little longer so your day isn't as long. Yeah.
Do you have access to Netflix in China?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
But to a
you've been
point,
through
like,
everything on Netflix, right?
oh my gosh, yeah. I watched so many shows. I read so many books, and I was just like, what else can I do? What else can I do?
You've been doing some press ups.
No, not too much.
You don't want to build the arms too much, but
No.
so what are your top three tips for helping keep me and other people sane? What have you learned about keeping yourself sane with this self isolation that you're going through?
Self isolation. Definitely access to internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, good internet, and I would say cooking actually is a pretty good thing to like,
Okay.
um, whether you want to call it like killing time or just picking it up as a hobby or whatever. But cooking actually, um, it does take a little bit of time, cooking or baking, and
That's what
you
we're
know.
talking about. We're talking about soaking up time now from what you're saying.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that.
And what about, I mentioned livelihoods just now.
Mhm.
What's actually happening out there on the street? Because I mean, we've already had one airline go to the wall
Right.
in this country. That's already folded in the last week or so. What's happening to businesses out there?
So I think small businesses in China really took a hit. And some of, the startups, and especially with the sort of like the social structure in China right now, the service industry is huge. So whether it be like restaurant, food, and delivery services, or we have these like huge portable chargers, like almost like a huge like chest of I don't know if you guys are familiar with these, but they're like a huge chest of portable chargers.
Yeah, I saw them when I
When you
was
go,
with you in China last November. Yeah.
yeah. So when you go out to malls, or like when you go out for a whole day of entertainment, you don't have to worry about your phone dying, and everything is on your phone as well. So you have to keep your battery charged. So we have a lot of startups just, related and are relied on the way that people live. And
Yeah.
they're just completely going to, I'm going to beat myself out. Beep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
No, I mean it is horrendous, isn't it?
right. Yeah. So honestly, a lot of my stress, especially towards the end of March, or towards the end of the self quarantine time, my stress really came from, the decline in our economy, not so much the virus, because we've had the virus almost under control. But now businesses have to worry about, how to bounce back and start making a profit again. And a lot of them, it's not even that, like they have to worry about, how to just survive the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, the number of infected people is decreasing, but we're still not sure when this is going to end 100%. So like small businesses still have to make sure that they get through the next couple of months while
Um,
making literally no money.
we've talked about some of the selfishness that this can create with people running to stockpile rice and everyone thinking about themselves. But
Hmm.
what other sides have you seen of humanity? Has it brought out a kinder side of humanity as well?
Um, I have not seen. Not, I'm not saying people are not kind. We've just not been outside enough to see it.
Fair
Does that
enough.
make sense at all?
Yeah,
Yeah, like
that
we,
does.
we see we see we can still see on the news, corporations or individuals are, making efforts, or like donating, making efforts towards, the entire, like the healing of the entire country from the coronavirus outbreak. um but we haven't been outside, so like everything is on pause. Does that make sense at all?
That's how it's feeling in this country. It feels like everything is just about to go on pause. Yeah.
Right.
Choni, I want to come back to you in another week or so's time. We've covered a lot of ground here. Um, I'd like to give people an opportunity to ask questions on the about the next time we talk. So I'm going to take
Yeah, of
any
course.
questions. I hope you found anyone watching this. I hope you found this interesting and enlightening. Um, in some ways, maybe it will bring us closer together, the East and the West. And
Right.
that's why I like talking to you, Choni, because you understand both sides of it. You've lived in the States, you live in China. Um, thank you very much for sharing your time. Wish
Thank
you
you.
the best of luck, and I'm going to be taking on board your tips for
Thank
self
you.
isolation.
Yeah, you as well. Yeah.
Johnny, I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, and in about a week or so, we're probably gonna see a whole different landscape too now. It's a
Yeah,
fast
you'll be
changing
out
world.
partying, and I'll be stuck up at home. Yeah.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
All right, we'll see. Thanks very
Right.
much, Johnny. Bye for
Yeah,
now.
no problem. Thank you.